Today I'm going to be doing a review of the Chicago Electric 14-inch industrial power cutoff saw. This is my Chicago Electric 14-inch power metal cutoff saw. It's rated with a 3.5 horsepower engine, 120 volts, 15 amps, 3,500 RPMs with a 1-inch arbor. I bought this saw last summer. It runs off the shelf at $97. You can throw a 20% coupon in and get the price a little bit lower than that. I've used this off and on last summer and a little bit this summer, and I'm going to give a review on whether I think this is a good saw to buy, whether you should go out and spend your money and buy a saw like this. We're going to pull out some metal. I'm going to cut some different thicknesses of angle iron and a couple pieces of flat stock to let you guys get an idea of how this thing runs. In my personal opinion, this saw is fine for really thin metal, like 1/8 inch or less, sheet metal, stuff like that. Anything over 1/8 of an inch and this saw will start to struggle and struggle hard. I was cutting just over 1/8. It might even have been 1/8 inch angle, and I had to stop the saw 2 or 3 times. It was like the saw stopped cutting altogether. He was just sitting there holding it at one position and it wasn't cutting at all. My opinion on this saw is, if you got a lot of work to do, don't waste your money. Go just buy the good saw. If you got a couple small pieces you got to cut and you're going to use it one time and that's it, that's a lot of money to spend on one time. Yeah, maybe go buy it. Get a angle grinder with a cutoff wheel on it and use that. This is an alright saw to use, but for the price you're spending, nearly $100, for not that much more, you can buy a really good one that is going to give you a lot better results. That's my opinion on this saw. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to pull a couple pieces of angle. We got some really thin stuff up to, I think, right around 1/8, maybe 3/16. We're going to do a couple cuts on this thing and give you an idea of how long it takes to cut different thicknesses of metal in real time. So let's do that. First piece we're going to cut is a piece of 16 gauge angle iron. So there's a couple things to know. What I found is, with this machine, if you put the angle in like this, which would be, sitting in there flat like this. See if I can get this saw adjusted so you can see it. Okay, and you cut like this, it'll cut through the backside really quick, right? As soon as it hits this bottom where it comes flat, it dies because you're cutting a longer piece, I'm guessing. So if you set it in like this, let's see, like this here, and cut it, it seems to cut better. We'll go ahead and cut it both ways and see which one's quicker. So on the 1/8 inch angle iron that we cut, on the first one we cut it like that, with the saw blade coming down through, and it ran fine until it hit the bottom. Once it hit the bottom, we heard the motor kind of bog out as it was cutting this long piece here, and it took a little bit longer to cut once it hit this bottom piece, but the back piece went through pretty quick. On the second cut, we set it in like this, and that way the saw blade started on the top and was cutting even the whole way through, so it seemed like it never bogged out at all and it ran even the whole way through. And to me it seemed like it cut a little bit better like that. So that's with thin stuff. It doesn't too bad. This is, like I said, 16 gauge. Let me go grab a piece of some 1/8 inch angle. Same thing, but 1/8 inch thick. we'll cut a piece of that, and then we got a piece of 1/8 inch flat stock, I believe. I looked around and I don't actually have a piece of 1/8 inch angle, but I do got this piece of 1/8 inch flat stock. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this, and what we'll do is we'll cut it laying down flat like this with a saw blade coming down this way, and then we'll stand it up like this and lay it down. That'll kind of get you the two angles that you would have with an angle piece of angle iron. I did find a piece of 14 gauge angle here. We could try to cut this too. This is a piece of bed railing. I don't know if this is different than regular the angle you get like a tractor supply from a metal place or whatever. But this is 14 gauge bed railing. We'll try to cut that too. For the first cut of my flat stock angle, I just got it standing straight up. We'll make a cut like that first. Okay, for my second cut on my flat, I just got it laying flat, so we're going to cut it long ways. So when I set this in the saw, and the saw blade came like this and cut it, this is 1/8 inch, it cut it pretty quick. But when I laid it down like this and cut it, as you can see here, if we can see, that's not much of a cut, and that was about the same amount of time that it took to cut it when I cut it long ways. So for 1/8 inch flat stock, cutting it like this was actually pretty impressive. The motor didn't bog out or nothing like that. But laying it flat like this, it just took a lot longer and didn't really cut anything at all. The motor never bogged out, but if I'd have kept pressing on it, it would have bogged out eventually. So that's the flat stock. The last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to bring this piece of angle. This is 16 gauge, but it's bed rail, so I don't know if that's a different kind of metal than like the regular metal like this. We're going to lay it in here, we're going to see if we can cut it, and see what happens from there. Alright guys, so on this angle here, this is the bed rail angle, and when I was cutting it, you could tell that it was a lot harder than this 1/8 inch flat stock, even though it is thinner than the 1/8 inch flat stock. So I don't know what kind of metal they use on this bed rail. It is a little tougher, but as you've seen, it seemed to cut pretty good. I mean, it didn't take long at all to cut that through. Like I said, whenever I was cutting it, you could tell that it was a harder metal, that it was harder, you know, I had to push harder, and it took a little bit longer to cut through, but still, it zipped through this stuff pretty stinking quick. So not too bad. And I didn't go ahead and cut it like this, you know, sitting in like this and then cutting it, let's see, where the saw blade would come down through like this, because once it hits this flat bottom here, what I found is any kind of length, it just kills the saw. You don't get no cuts at all. So, you know, on angle, I flip it like that, and it seems to cut a lot better. Flip like that than like that. At the beginning of this video, I kind of knocked this saw a little bit, saying it was $100. I should have saved my money and went and got something else. But to be 100% honest with you, I'm actually surprised. I sat down and did these little tests today, and I'm actually surprised at how well this performed. This 1/8 inch flat stock, it zipped through it in a couple seconds. Even this harder angle iron, I put it in there and it didn't take a whole lot longer, although that is a harder iron. I'm not sure what it's made of. Like I said, it's bed rail, but it's a little bit harder. And the thin stuff, it zipped through the thin stuff like butter. But the biggest thing that I found is how you position the metal in this saw. Now it might be different for different saws, I don't know, but for this saw, if you got any kind of flat like this and the saw blade's coming this way, it's not going to cut it at all. It's going to take a very long time to cut it. The saw's going to bog out. But if you can take this flat piece and stand it up on end, it will zip through this in a couple seconds. And if you lay this angle like this and you try to cut through it, it's going to cut through the backside quick. But as soon as it gets to that flat bottom, that's where it bogs out. And that's what I was having problems with before. But what I found when I flip it like this and cut it where it's cutting on each side the same amount of time, it actually cuts through it pretty quick. Naturally, the thinner stuff, the 16 gauge sheet metal angle, like I said, we just cut it like that, but it zipped through it like it was butter. So I'm actually really impressed with this saw after sitting down and actually doing tests and moving metal around and figuring out which way is the best to cut it. And to be honest with you, I think I spent $97 and I used a 20% coupon, so I probably got it for, like, with tax and everything, in like the high 70s or mid 80s, something like that. That's not a bad deal. I would definitely suggest, unless you're using it, you know, 8-10 hours a day, 7 days a week. You know, if you're just a hobbyist that does this stuff on the weekends, this is a great saw. I think it's a great saw. We'll see how long it lasts, but so far it's been 1.5 years and it's been doing great so far for me. And you know, you got to just be careful and just pay attention to how you put these pieces of metal in. You put them in the right way and it'll zip through them pretty quick. I wish I had some thicker stuff to cut, but this is about the thickest I got, 1/8 inch. So at this point, looking at this saw, I would recommend it. But this is the 14 inch Chicago Electric 3.5 horsepower motor. It has a 1 inch arbor on it. If you like videos like this, give me a thumbs up. Go into the comment section if you got this saw. Tell me what you think about it, what you don't like about it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video.